Hello and welcome to this first video on the Pong series. And so we're going to create the classic Pong game. And so make sure you've opened up Unity and use a new game, right? Create a new game here. So I'm going to create a new project. I'm going to create a new folder too. I'm going to put mine on the desktop, but I highly suggest you put this on your H drive. So I'm just going to create a new one here. Pong. Select my folder. Probably call it Pong as well. And I guess we'll set that to 2D since we won't be using 3D for Pong, and then create the project there. So this first video here will be just focusing on setting up the game, bringing in some of the assets which you'll have available to you, and really just putting everything together before we start scripting here. If you're designing your own game, one of the big things to consider is, how am I going to make it? What's my first step going to be? And so, when I do these tutorials for you, it helps you out a little bit because it sort of guides you through the steps there. But planning and sort of thinking about what sort of scripts you'll need, what kind of assets you'll need, how you're going to go about it, where you should start with, and where you're going to end up. That's always a big consideration, and really going through these tutorials starts to show you how you can best go about that process. So once this finally opens up here on my 9-year-old computer, we'll get going, and I'll sort of show you the scripts that we're going to make, some folders we're going to make, and bringing in the assets. I think we're almost here. So first thing that we'll do, I'm just going to set up my window here and sort of in my 2x3, which I like, and actually it's defaulted to how I like it here. So with the hierarchy down here and so on. So you might want to set up your window to be the same, and that would be with layout 2x3, right? That's the default, and just dragging this one down. Now I'm not a big fan of how Unity now creates a sample scene. I always have trouble changing the name here. So I'm just going to create a new scene and then delete that one. So I'm going to new scene, save that scene, and put it in my scenes folder here. I'm just going to call it game, and then just get rid of that sample scene. Okay. Good. And let's go about creating some new folders as well. So in our assets folder, we've got our scenes, and I'm going to create a couple new folders. And so one of them will be fonts, because we'll bring in a font. We'll create a folder for our graphics. Oops, don't make that a subfolder. Go. So we're going to create a new folder. What was I going to say there? Graphics. And another one. And that one will be our resources. And actually, I'm going to go inside that one and create a subfolder called our prefabs. So we've actually got a subfolder inside our resources. And we need our scripts. I think we're missing that one. And we should have 5 there. Yep, so that should be good. All right, we might as well make our scripts as well while we're at it. So I'm going to go into my scripts folder and just create a bunch of C# scripts. So the first one we'll call ball. That will control the ball there. The other one, okay, there it is, a little slow. We're going to have player, so I can change it. Yeah, it's opening up that, sorry. So we're going to have another folder called ball. There we go. Okay, so I got ball, and then there we go, player. And another one. We'll call that one computer. So those are both be the player controller basically, and the computer controller for AI opponent. A couple more. One will be sort of our game manager. And the last one will be our, basically our heads-up display, or our, our overlay in terms of our UI. So I just call it the HUD, right, for heads-up display, but you could also call that sort of your UI, your user interface, or whatever you'd like to call it there. Okay, so those scripts should give us all that we need to create our game. One thing that we're going to do here is not use the Unity physics. And the reason why is that I've used the Unity collisions in the past, so the physics engine in the past, and it's never given me quite the game I wanted, and I always had to go in and tweak it with the scripts anyways. And really, Pong, if you based it on physics, doesn't really work out all that well. So this gives you a little bit more control, makes it more of a game. If you imagine back when it was originally programmed, close to 45 years ago now, we didn't have physics engines. So all the movement of the ball and the paddle and so on were really programmed, and they were designed to emulate reality, but not exactly imitate it, right? So we have to take a few little liberties with physics, and being able to do it through programming will make that much easier than trying to use the Unity engine. All right, so let's set up a few things here with the camera and so on. So on the game window, which I got right here, you can set the display and the aspect ratio, and we're going to set that to 4:3. Us old school people will notice that this looks a lot more square than we're used to in terms of viewing of the TV, for example. But old CRT monitors were all this 4:3 aspect ratio. Nowadays, it's 16:9 is our typical sort of widescreen, but TVs were almost square, 4:3, and to emulate Pong, that's what we're going to sort of go by that, these old CRT monitors. If you picked up a Nintendo Classic or something like that, the SNES Classic as well, they're all based on that 4:3 or ratio, and CRT flicker and those characteristics. That's how old school games were. We're also going to set up the camera here just to match that up, and all we're going to do is click on the camera and change up the size there to 11. Okay, and you can just sort of zoom out, but basically that just sort of gives us a nice view of the game here. So we're going to find our assets, and I've got my assets on my desktop, and you'll have them available to you. So just sort of find them there, and they're in here, and I'm going to bring those in. So let me just, in the fonts, I'm going to drag, let me just open this one up here. It's a little bit smaller. There we go. So I should be able to bring in the font. So this is the font there. Good. So there's the font. And in the graphics, we've got these three. So I'm just going to open up my graphics folder. I'll just bring them in separately. Oops, did that go in? Chris. I don't know why it's in my fonts. Oh, I guess I accidentally brought that in as well. Just a second here. Okay. Try this again. I think it's accidentally selected those ones. Paddle. I don't know why it's doing that. It's dragging a little ball around here or a box around it for some reason. Okay. But you should be able to drag these in. I don't know why I'm having technical difficulties here. There we go. And try one more with the paddle. There we are. All right, Mr. Fleming knows how to drag and drop. So we've got our assets in here. Basically, we're just going to drag them into the game. But before we do that, I'm just going to set up a few things with the graphics. Just forgot here. So I'm just going to hold Shift and get all of these. One of the things that we're going to do is set these to for the pixels per unit, just to adjust the size, and we'll set that to 10 pixels. So basically 10 pixels of this graphic make up one Unity unit. And then just to help with the graphics there, we're going to set the filter mode to point. And that's just because these are really, really simple graphics. We don't need to worry about anti-aliasing or anything like that. So we're going to drag these into the game. And we have to drag them in one by one. If you drag them in multiply, they will cause a bit of a problem. So I think it's an animation. Oops, and that one's thinking it's an animation already. Let's just drag it into this game here. Oh, it's because I got multiple selected again. Just a second. Oh, and I didn't save that. Let me do this again. Sorry. 10 and point and apply. Okay, perfect. Now I can drag them in. So I just drag them in here, the paddle, and the ball. Okay, hopefully we can get all this done. And then the paddle here, one we're going to call the player paddle. So I'll just set that one up to player paddle. And then we'll also make a duplicate of it called the computer paddle. And so all I did there was Control D to duplicate it. Get rid of that. And computer paddle. Okay, good. And we'll just position those before we go here. So I'm going to set the position to, for the player, -13, which should move me over there. And it might not be visible at the moment. I'm going to set that to -2. Okay, so it should become visible. And the computer paddle, we'll set it at +13 and -2 again. And just for the moment, we'll bring the ball out and set that to -2 just to make sure it's visible on the same plane. And we'll just make prefabs of all three of these just before we go. And so I'm going to go into my resources and into my prefabs. And basically what I'm going to do is for the ball and the two paddles, make prefabs of them. So I can just drag those into my assets. There they all are. And that will just allow us to make the changes and make sure that they're prefabs there. And we'll actually can get rid of the ball here because we'll instantiate the ball later on. And let's just drag the scripts onto these as well. So we'll just finish up with dragging the scripts. So on the ball, we'll go the ball script. On the player paddle, so just make sure I got my player paddle. The script we'll drag is the player script. Oh, and I've got a problem there because I messed it up. I'll fix that up. Somehow my name didn't come across. It's probably because I changed it. I had that trouble. Let me just, yeah, saying new behavior script on that one. Player. Okay, that should solve that problem. So let me go back to my prefabs. So player paddle. And I should be able to drag my script on it now, hopefully. Player. Good. And last but not least, so go back to my prefabs, computer, and then add my script of my computer. And hopefully that one works out. Good. All right. Last thing we'll do is just create an empty in here. So I'm going to create empty. Just make sure that's at 0, 0, 0. Just reset it. And then I'm just going to call this my game. So I can set game object. I'm just going to call it game. And then just drag our game script onto there. Good. So now in the next video, we will start actually doing some scripting to get our paddle to move about. All right. See you then.